touching the sound, hearing the score, smelling the notes, seeing the sounds, tasting the timbres. I suggest here that recombinatory potentialities, permeable vessels of sensing, are part of sound perception and the act of performing, composing and listening to music. Tactility is the point of departure for this sensorial trip, destination the human body, and the perceptual act of hearing, making and thinking of music. I am opening John Cage's composition titled 27 minutes 10.554 seconds for one percussionist, dated 1956. It is regarded as the first solo percussion piece ever written. Hereafter, I do not delve into an analysis of the composition, nor of the specific characteristics of the notated music. Rather, I am attempting to identify spatio-temporal and kinesthetic relationships between the music written and the music played and heard, and how these deal primarily with body proprioceptive, interoceptive, and haptic responses. In his introductory notes, Cage writes, "Percussion instruments are here divided into 4 groups: M, metal, W, wood, S, skin, and A, all others, electronic devices, mechanical arrangements, whistles, etc." The composer continues by saying that a correspondence between time and space is made so that one page equal to 1 minute. The numbers above the systems are the seconds of the minute. I have to specify that seconds are not given consecutively but only when needed, with gaps on the system that last as long as 40 to 50 seconds. The Cage score immediately proposes an ambiguity, a lacuna. Where are the instruments and the sounds? Where is the tempo? This fissure can be bridged only by the body. It is the body that is at the center of the score. It is the body providing the sounds, the instruments and the tempo. I take a step backward. I'm opening the score, I read the notes. Now I'm ready to choose the instruments I prefer based on the very broad categories provided by John Cage. To do so, I should know what the sounds sound like. As the composer did not specify here a marimba, there a gong, and here a snare drum, I am requested to exercise my audiation capabilities. At the same time, I am requested to recompose the piece, as the notation is somewhat scant and at times almost diaphanous in its simplicity. Here, by using the word simplicity, I do not hint at a simplistic notation. Rather a clean, linear, minimal, not minimalistic approach, Chinese calligraphy, Japanese haiku. As sounds are not given among the 4 categories provided, metal, wood, skin, and others, I need to pre-hear the combinatorial possibilities that will result in the choices of any of the instruments involved. Again, I'm actively recomposing the piece. At the same time, I need to take into consideration physical, spatial, and temporal relations to understand whether the combination of certain instruments is even playable, given the body characteristic and potential limitation, kinesphere in primis. Finally, I have to evaluate implements, mallets, beaters, or anything else that will help me to do what I intend to do. I am moving from a conceptual, inward, to a sensorial, outward aspect of the score. Now the concern is more tactile, deambulatory, kinetic. I am reaching out to the space around me. I should clarify before proceeding further that I obviously simplify a process that has no starting point or ending trajectory. The aforementioned components feed on each other and trigger other semiotic chains, rhizomatic and trails. By schematizing the steps of this procedure, I am attempting to make the process and the constituting elements somehow more apparent, permeable. I am in space now. Cage is dialoguing with me. A correspondence between time and space is made so that one page is equal to 1 minute. The space of a score, roughly an A3 page, corresponds, overlaps, and defines the physical space in which I move. In fact, the space of the performing act is translated onto the space of the A3 score, and the other way around. The space of the A3 score is translated onto the physical space of the performing act. It has to be noticed that the 2 translations are reciprocal, therefore it is difficult to suppose whether Cage had in mind the bidimensional notational space before the tridimensional performing space, or the opposite, or whether the inward sonic space of the composer was encompassing both in an act of synthetic conceptualization. However it might have been for John Cage, as a performer I am traveling back and forth between the physical and the notational space. I read a score as a kinetic map, a topography of the body which hints at specific gestures, relationships and space-time considerations. Not only gestural awareness is demanded of me, but also detailed sonic representation which is hinted at it in the score but not fully stated. I choose the instruments, I select the implement to strike the instruments, I hold the former and I hit the letter. It is a tactile voyage that elicits an acoustic response with which I communicate musical ideas to a hypothetical audience, myself or both. The moment I am requested to think of metal, wood, skin and the so-called other instruments, the senso's map is no longer limited to touch or hearing. Olfactographies and tasteographies, maps of the senses, emerge. I cannot think of metal object without involving at some point thermal, chromatic, olfactory or gustatory feedback. The moment I touch the cold surface of the gong, a peculiar ferrous smell sticks to my fingers and provokes my nostrils. Gongs made of brass and the combination of bronze have a distinctive color and texture which I cannot avoid noticing. Inadvertently, I might bring fingers to my lips and the olfactory experience deliquesces in a gustatory ones. Here sidelong memory, rhizomatic intermezzo, feedback into the sensuous chains belonging to the taste of iron, salt, blood, meat. The score defined the physical space as the letter defined the scores. A preliminary consideration appears. Will I read and orchestrate the score differently if it is printed on an A6 rather than A1 size of paper? Magnification of lines, dots, events, numbers, letters are acting upon my understanding of the music. How 1 page, 1 minute is perceived if the page is as large as 84 per 119 cm or as small as 7 per 10 cm? Can I eventually visualize the physical space in performance featuring a setup covering 8 per 8 square meters, when my score is a mere 7 per 10 centimeters in size? A further observation. If my body is used to being told daily how to move according to socially acceptable praxis, in spaces such as subways, public transport, administration buildings, working places, schools, hospitals, hotels, banks, shopping malls, etc., how will this eventually affect my perception of space at large, and my perception of performing space, the kinetics of the body, the relation with the score, the relation with notated music? How, in brief, will I make decisions concerning what the music is about if normative practices imposed by the social habitus have patterned and configured my body's behavior? Because of this impasse, I can indulge in alluding to the Hijigata and Koku-Buto method of body transformation. In Japanese Buto, the human body is emptied of its original content. It is the Hertodian body without organs and its Deleuzian reiteration. A body without a will of its own, a puppet, a vessel hosting an alien body. Buto asks the performer to renounce his own body, to develop sensitivity to a multitude of potential beings, animals, insects, objects, surfaces. As theater director Suzuki Tadashi suggests, Hijikata's work revealed a consciousness of time and space similar to that of kabuki and Noh theater, which emerges from an acute awareness of flesh. Awareness of the flesh, which is the crux of the ability to bypass cultural norm and social habitus, or eventually retrofit and ingest them into performative gesture. I conclude this very short presentation with the awareness of having generated more questions than answers, even when these questions occasionally dress themselves up as answers, in Wilhelm Flusser words. My little contribution, rather than suggesting a solution, hopes to generate a critical challenge to the perception of the senses, the human body, and its fundamental relation between the thinking, making, and hearing of music.